Okay, Dean Legge show for the week of Georgia's matchup with North Texas. They will play this game on September 21st. Georgia with a big win over South Carolina, 41-30 this past week, setting up what should be a pretty good run to Atlanta if all goes as planned. Obviously, LSU and Georgia will play on CBS in a couple of weeks. That game will matter in terms of national championship implications, but that's so far away that's a little bit ridiculous to talk about for any team right now. Certainly for a team with one loss like Georgia. But the win over South Carolina was certainly not insignificant. It was a massive win in terms of the ability to chart their own path. They don't have to wait for South Carolina to lose 2 games this season. In the past, they had to. So that won't be a problem for Georgia. But from this point forward, and if you look at the landscape of the SEC, obviously A&M losing to Alabama is irrelevant to Georgia, I think, on a lot of different levels. But, Vanderbilt now has 2 losses in the conference. So they're pretty much done. South Carolina still chugging along, but they've got a long way to go. And then Florida and Tennessee will play this week. I think the Gators, should win that game. It's down there in Gainesville. And after the beating Tennessee took at Oregon, one has to wonder if they're really ready nationally and certainly in the conference to play at a high level. We'll see. That's probably a pretty good question. Let's go straight into the questions. I don't think a lot of people are super concerned about the North Texas matchup, although Mark Richt made them sound like they'd probably be playing in the Super Bowl later this year. First question is about Shaq Wiggins and questioning if him and guys like Tim Kimbrough, Reggie Carter, Johnny O'Neal, Shaquille Fluker, and Kenner and other guys are going to play more in the coming weeks. And the answer is, of course, they will. Yes, there's no question about that. But I think they're most comfortable with Brandon Langley. I mean, he's a lot bigger than Shaq, and I think that matters right now to this defense. They're going to try to get a lot better over these coming weeks. They're going to have to. They're not going to play. The thing about Georgia is they're not going to be dealing with any more mobile quarterbacks from here on out. I mean, Zach Mettenberger is definitely not what I would call mobile. So that's going to change the arithmetic a little bit for the defense. That should help some. But Zach can really throw it. So we'll see. A different question. Same person's talking about Jonathan Rumpf. It looks right now like Jonathan Rumpf might miss another game. So we're 4 weeks into the season, and this hamstring is really bothering Jonathan Rumpf. And he really had a very good spring. Might take him a little bit of time to get going. So that's disappointing because he's one of the guys I really do think could kind of stretch the field a little bit more for Georgia. Talking about Canarius Gates, he should be good to go this week. He probably would not have played last week, so that's another good thing about having off weeks. This really wouldn't have been a great time to have an off week, and next year they have an early off week too between Clemson and South Carolina. So we'll see how that plays out. But this week will be sort of a scrimmage, and they'll take it from there. Question from CDC 99. I don't know if that means they work at the CDC or not, or they did or whatever, but. What's your take on the corner position opposite Swan? I felt like we were expecting to see more Sheldon Dawson. Is Dawson 100% start? Does a 100% Dawson start over Langley in your opinion? I thought we'd see a little bit more Dawson too, but I think Langley has played. I thought Langley played really well against Clemson. Now against South Carolina, they picked on him a little bit more, and they did a good job of scoring against him. We'll see if that continues. Corners can sometimes have a pretty quick learning curve. So we'll see. I mean, I think Sheldon Dawson's a pretty good player. They're just out there with Langley right this second. And then you got to keep in mind, too, they're not just going to be playing with 2 corners just because of the situation with nickels and dimes and so forth. They're going to be playing with a bunch of kids in the secondary. Should Georgia's expectation be that the defense is young and will improve significantly over the course of the year? They're definitely young. There's no question about that. Will they improve significantly? They will not allow 30 points a game from here on out like they have, but they're not going to be, shut down. I don't think. They're just not at that point. Now, next year, sure. Yeah, they really could be shut down. If so, this team could be really, really hard to beat towards the back end of the season, right? Well, if they become shut down, then Georgia's just not going to lose. But I don't think that that's necessarily where that the defense is at yet. But I think it could. It could dramatically improve. I mean, all this season we heard the talking heads on the message boards talk about how much better this defense was going to be because it didn't have any superstars. Well, you know what? You need superstars, and Georgia has them. They're just very, very young, and I think that that's the difference. Is that there's going to be plenty of guys on this defense right now that are going to play in the NFL. I think guys like Jordan Jenkins, Leonard Floyd, Damian Swan. I mean, they've got guys that are going to play in the NFL. But, and Trey Matthews, Josh Harvey Clemens, they got plenty of them. They just have never played college football before. Not really. So, with the exception of Swan and Garrison Smith, this is a brand new group. Got to keep that in mind. So could they be a lot better by the end of the season? They certainly could be, but let's not expect them to go out there and stone, LSU or, hold Tennessee to, 10 points. Let's be realistic. This team is still going to have to rely on the offense. How concerned am I about Georgia overlooking coming out flat in the Vandy or Tennessee road games? I don't think they will against Vanderbilt, simply because the last time they played up there they really struggled. But at Tennessee they could a little bit. It's really, people can say Tennessee's not what they used to be, but that crowd is still going to be about 98,000 people. That's a lot of people. And if you can't hear, you can't hear. And that makes it tough, even for the defense at times. It's tough to play on the road, period. And defense didn't play great on the road against Clemson. But Clemson's a lot better than Tennessee. So I don't think they'll be flat, but they could be flat. I mean, that's what happens in college football. That happens pretty much to every team. Ask Michigan. I think South Carolina came flat against Vandy in the second half. Alabama, Alabama was flat that first quarter. I mean, they just did not look good. So it happens. You have to be good enough to get past those moments. This is a person with a long statement, basically, about Aaron Murray, about how well he played against South Carolina. And I won't read it all, but I'll basically sum it up. It says, Dean, where would you rank Aaron's performance versus all other Georgia quarterbacks? Basically asking about Aaron versus David versus DJ versus Matthew versus Joe Cox and Joe Tarasinski, I guess. I think Aaron really played well against South Carolina. I don't know if that was the best game he's ever played. I think, and everybody always laughs about this, he really played well against Kentucky last year, and they needed him to play well. They could have lost that game. So I don't think it was the best game he played. I think it was one of the better games he played, and he played really big in big moments, which has been that's been the one thing that's sort of been missing with Aaron, is certainly his first 2 years. But from this point forward, he has played pretty well in big moments. I mean, you go back and you look, they've played the last four top 10 teams, whatever it is, that they've played. They've split those games, and they've had their chances to win all four. He was not the reason necessarily that they lost to Alabama, or to me that they lost to Clemson, but he was definitely the reason they beat South Carolina this past time. And I would argue he was the reason that they beat Florida in 2012. So that was a huge game. And Aaron played great in that game. Is he better than David Green? Physically, he probably is better than David Green. He doesn't have the defense David had, and that makes a big difference. Is he better than Matthew? No, I don't think so. He's probably in the same ballpark as DJ. He'll probably get drafted a little bit higher than DJ. But I can't give a definitive opinion on Aaron Murray because it's impossible to do that with, the rest of the season. I mean, he can still lift trophies, so it's impossible for me to say where Aaron is, but he certainly he has earned a lot of respect since that Florida game forward last year. And I do and have always thought that people overdo it with the Aaron Murray hate nationally for sure, and locally too. They say, well, he hasn't won the big game. Well, now he has won the big game. Even though he had won the big game before, he's won the big game again. So basically, what you're holding against Aaron Murray is that you don't like him because he dated your ex-girlfriend, or B, you don't like him because Georgia hasn't won the SEC or national championship, or C, you don't like him because he throws too many touchdowns, or you don't like him because he's from Tampa, or you wish he'd shave more often, or it gets stupid after a while. Aaron needs to perform in big moments. He did that against South Carolina. I think he did that against Alabama and Florida. Against Clemson, did he do that? He threw an interception at a critical time, and Georgia didn't have Todd on the field at a critical time. Aaron can't be out there, and I'm not going to defend Aaron Murray the rest of my life because I feel like it's ridiculous. I think Aaron, there's not really much to defend. He's probably going to throw his 100th touchdown of his career coming up. You can laugh about statistics all you want to. You got to put numbers up, and he has. And let's not forget where he was when this program started. The program was when he started. It was in bad shape, and those guys were 6 and 7. They weren't very good. Now look at where they are right now. They've been consistently in the top 10 the last 2 years for sure, and a lot of the last 3 years. So, and Aaron's a lot of the reason why. Now, is he prototypically perfect? No. Do people have doubts about Aaron? Everyone has doubts about guys on this team. Period. So that's part of sports and big time places. You're going to have doubters and haters or whatever you want to call them. But for me, Aaron Murray, he's done really well. Here's a play calling note. It says, I like the coach's play calling Saturday. I did not always know what was coming, and when I did at the end of the game, South Carolina could not stop it. The onside kick was good, which I really have to say that was. People always say, oh, well, Mark Richt's really not that great of a game day coach. I'm not really as sure about that as I once was. He has. Think about the trick play against. They've done an onside kick that succeeded against South Carolina. They had a fake punt that succeeded against Clemson. They had a fake punt that succeeded against Alabama. They snuffed out a fake punt by Missouri. That's good coaching. I would argue. I really thought that was very good. And the poster goes on to say that Jadeveon Clowney was very well handled. Now, that's definitely good coaching. I thought they outcoached South Carolina. I thought they had the better players basically at every position. And when you win by double digits, and it could have been, could have been 18, but it wasn't much worse than an 11-point win for Georgia. That's the way it should have been. They were the better team. I can't say they were the better team 2 of the last 3 years against South Carolina, and last year they just caught up in this buzzsaw. And South Carolina's got its own issues. That's their deal. But I think that Clowney, the cult of Clowney is going to change as this season goes on. Why haven't we seen more of Chase Foster this year? Well, because he's been hurt and he's not as good as some of the guys that are on the team, so that are playing his position. That's just that's how it goes. A lot of it's that he's hurt, though. That's for sure. I haven't heard John Taylor's called a lot in a big game yet, or in a game yet. How well and how much is he currently playing? He's playing a lot. You're not going to hear guys like John Taylor's name called. You're not going to hear guys like, John's a second-string defensive tackle or defensive lineman. He's not going to get his name called a lot. He should maybe make 3 to 4 tackles a game at most. So, no, you're not going to hear him called a lot. But that doesn't mean he's not doing his thing. He was in there on that goal line standing against South Carolina. That was a big deal. Who leads Georgia in receptions or yards at the end of the year? Whew. Oh, man. That's a tough one. I would probably say the way it's going right now, I guess I would say receptions would probably be Michael Bennett, but yards will probably be somebody else, and I don't know who. That's a good question. Another question about Brendan Langley. How much of Brendan's play against South Carolina was nerves, anxiety related to him playing to a team he was previously committed to? I think it was more about Spurrier targeting him, as you ask in this question as well. Listen, Steve Spurrier is sometimes underrated as a coach. He's probably, to me, one of the top 3 all-time in the SEC. If not, I could make the argument he's the best ever in the SEC. So he's going to know how to call an offense and identify a player. Brendan Langley's not going to get picked on forever, so there's going to be a time. This is his second game in college. I think, let's keep in mind, too, that Langley never really visited South Carolina in the fall of last year. He was always visiting Georgia. I think he always wanted to go to Georgia. So, sometimes I think the recruiting thing is overdone. You got to keep in mind that Langley has been on campus for a couple of months, and that in general, guys, they just... once they're on, you don't think about where you didn't go to school. I don't think. Next question, would you attribute the lack of quarterback pressure on our plan to contain the 2 running quarterbacks we faced, or do you think that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to heating up and sacks? Well, I think it is both, but I do think they're going to need to get better pressure and take the quarterback down. My philosophy about sacks is pretty simple. You get a sack, 1 sack ends a series. Typically, teams get about 10 to 12 series a game, about 3 a quarter, something like that. If you can take away 8% with 1 sack of a team's ability to score, and then you take away 8% again, making that 16-ish, somewhere in there, you start chipping away at a team's ability to score, they're not going to score. Naturally, offenses are going to fail. So Georgia does want more pressure. It's going to be tough against Tennessee because of their tackles. But against North Texas, certainly against a very not mobile Zach Mettenberger, they're going to have to bring pressure. But now, against Zach, Matthew Stafford used to tell me he used to always love the blitz because it was easy to go from there. Even if they didn't pick it up, he knew where he was going. If Zach is as good as I think he can be, then maybe you don't want to blitz sometimes. But Todd Grantham knows vastly more than anybody watching this, what to do on defense. He's got some young guys. He's got some very talented guys, particularly edge rushers with Leonard Floyd and Jordan Jenkins, but they haven't had sacks yet. Does that have to do with mobile quarterbacks? Yes, of course it does. But they still need to get a little bit more pressure because that really changes the game. Look at Aaron when he gets pressure. He's a totally different quarterback. Quarterbacks are different quarterbacks when they get pressure. That's why the most important position on the field is the quarterback. Second most important, the guy who pressures the quarterback. Why do you think those guys get paid so much? And why do you think left tackles get paid so much in the NFL? And in some parts of the SEC, apparently. I know Georgia has a good crop of receivers, but I've always been perplexed as to why Georgia doesn't get many big-name wide receiver recruits, especially since Georgia features a pro-style offense under Richt and Bobo, etc. Well, that's a good point. I've had some assistant coaches at Georgia say to me, it is stunning that a school that has had A.J. Green doesn't get another A.J. Green, meaning another high-level guy. That's a good question. I don't know. I think Jonathan Rump can be pretty good. I really do. If he could just get healthy, we'll see just how spectacular he can be. But Georgia's receivers are better than they ever have been, even without Malcolm. I think they'd prefer to have Malcolm Mitchell, but they're better than they've ever been. They are. I don't want to say they're deadly, but they're tough to deal with, and I think we've seen that. I don't have the sticks right in front of me, but I think they've had probably 600-700 yards passing in 2 games, and that's a lot of balls getting thrown their way. So I don't know why a kid wouldn't want to go to Georgia. I'm trying to think of the most recent sort of southern wide receiver that's been a huge deal, like Julio and AJ. They obviously were not both going to go to the same school. And I think AJ's better. There's nothing wrong with Julio Jones, but AJ's better for sure. I don't know. That's a good question. Part of it, to some degree, is that in the state of Georgia itself, um, it's still, the high school is still very much run based. You don't get a ton of schools. You get it in metropolitan areas to some degree. I can think of, North Gwinnett or even, Wayne County over in southeast Georgia. But there's not tons of schools. I mean, if I can think of a few off the top of my head, like Colquitt and North and places like that means, you've got other schools. There's a lot more schools like Camden and Tucker and enter the name of a lot of state championship teams. They are more apt to run, but I think we're seeing the spread come in more, and we'll see more receivers. But I think that's a great question. They really should get more high level receivers. But the guys they got now are pretty darn good. I mean, Marlon Brown was a 5-star guy, and kind of wasted that first year, but he played well for Georgia over time. He just didn't get to finish out the year because of the ACL. Now he's tearing it up with the Ravens. I mean, they've gotten him, but they need to get more. I agree with that. Do I expect Hudson Mason to play a half against North Texas? I'm anxious to see him in live action. I guess a preview of what to expect next year. I do expect Hudson to play. I think he'll play starting sometime in the second quarter. I think we may see Aaron Murray in the third quarter for one series, and then Hudson gets to play a fair amount from that point forward. I think that he will start next season, if I had to guess right now. I also think that Bryce Ramsey will play some next year as well, but we're 12 months from next year, and Hudson needs to get as ready as possible because he's the most likely to be the starter in 2014. How many people do you see Georgia losing in the next year on both sides of the ball? Obviously, Aaron, Artie Lynch, Canarius Gates is a senior. Dallas Lee is a senior. They're not losing a ton. You're still probably going to have David Andrews. Colton Houston will still be around. John Theus will still be around. Brandon Kublana will probably be a starter next year if I had to guess. Obviously, Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall. I think Keith Marshall likely will stay for 4 years. Keith, I would be disappointed in Todd if he didn't leave. He needs to leave just because of his ability, and you don't want to wear and tear too much in college. And then on defense, Garrison Smith will have to leave. Swan could leave for sure, but that's about it. Now that defense is starting 7 sophomore or younger, so that's a young defense. And the poster goes on to say Georgia should be a top 5 team the next year or two. Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've done a great job of recruiting. That's been my number one criticism. People for a long time said it was the coaching. They look not as intelligent as they certainly thought when they were making that argument at the time. Georgia's won a lot of football games. The only football games they've lost of late have been to top 5 teams who've recruited pretty darn well themselves. You go back and you look at they lost last year to Alabama, who was number 2 at the time. They lost to South Carolina, who I think was number 4 or 5, whatever it was at the time, top 10. You look at the year before that was LSU, Michigan State, Boise, who was a top 5 team at the time, and South Carolina, who was number 11 at the time. It's always about the players. It's always about the players. It's always about the players. You don't have the players, you can forget it. They have the players right now, and you're seeing that they are performing. I mean, they're going to average 11. I guess right now they're averaging 11 wins a season. That's a lot. People say, "Oh, they can't win a big game." So stupid. It really is annoying at times. The recruiting has been the reason why Georgia's gotten much better, and if you don't think the recruiting matters, then you don't think Todd Gurley matters. He was ready to go from day one. He didn't get here early like Keith Marshall did. I mean, sometimes you got to go get guys, and Todd was an example of that. How's Georgia match up against LSU at this point? Well, they should be favored. should be favored, and they should win. They're playing at home, and that's a game they should win for sure. Now, whether they will or not, that's a good question. But they'll be a 3 to 5, 6 point favorite, something like that. That won't be crazy. I mean, LSU's good, but Georgia should be favored, and they should win that game. But we'll see what happens in the long term. The LSU game, if you're concerned about winning the SEC East, the LSU game is a game that doesn't matter. But I think they want to win as many conference games as you can. It's not on the division side, but if they win that game, it's going to be tough for anybody else to win the East if Georgia beats LSU. The only team probably at that point that could catch them are the Gators, and I think they have their own set of issues. So anyhow, another Dean Legge show in the bank. Catch us on Saturday. Georgia should knock off North Texas pretty quick, and everybody will start hand-wringing over the LSU game at that point. So catch us next time here, Dean Legge Show.